It's official. Donald Trump has essentially signed his own political death certificate. The Epstein Files Release Act landed on his desk, and he has now signed it into law. And yes, we all know that Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bandy, and the rest of his inner circle will still try to obstruct at every turn. But with this signature, Trump just made that obstruction far more difficult and made the public pressure impossible to ignore. That's exactly why he immediately melted down on Truth Social after shutting down the White House ahead of signing the bill. We're going to break down what he posted and why his rant includes new, shocking evidence. Tonight is wild. But before we get into Trump's signature and his unhinged response, if you could quickly leave a like on this video and, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It really helps support our work. Now, before we talk about the bill signing and Trump's meltdown, we have to start with the other major breaking news. Trump shut down the White House and kicked out the entire press corps before he did it.
So where is the bill? Is it at the White House?
Pamela, that's the question we've all been trying to get to the bottom of. We have about 10 White House producers and reporters who have been asking all of their sources, when is he going to sign the bill? Is the bill even at the White House? All to at least mostly radio silence. Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, was caught by reporters, asked when President Trump was going to sign this bill, and he said he had no update on that at this time. And just a reminder, it wasn't just one White House official, it was a number of White House officials who said, alongside President Trump himself, that he would sign this bill when it hit his desk. Now, we were told that after it was sent over by the Senate, that the process of getting it here to the White House could take a few hours. But that was hours and hours and hours ago, and we still have no reaction, no answers to the questions of whether or not it's even here, whether or not it's even made it to President Trump's desk. So, of course, this is raising even more questions as to, in particular, is he going to actually sign this bill? Again, White House officials and the president himself have said they've committed to him signing it. Then the big question becomes, if he does in fact sign it, what's actually released and when is it released? I've been told by White House officials President Trump isn't going to stand in the way of any of these documents being released. But again, we still don't even have the basics of whether or not the bill is here at the White House. So, Pamela.
I know you're...
If you think this is business as usual, that Donald Trump is suddenly going to embrace transparency, willingly unseal every document, release every photo, and allow every video to be made public for the millions of people demanding answers, you are completely mistaken. And I know you don't believe that, but for anyone who might, we cannot let Republicans rewrite this moment. If they genuinely supported transparency, the press would be inside the White House tonight. But they aren't. They were kicked out, shut out, and locked out. And why? Because Donald Trump does not want transparency. We cannot let anyone pretend otherwise. But here's the twist. In the middle of his meltdown, Trump accidentally shared new evidence about the Epstein files in the very post he made trying to rewrite history. It was another desperate attempt to spin the narrative, one that Jasmine Crockett called out perfectly in Congress, which we'll look at before breaking down Trump's post.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for calling this hearing. Since January, Donald Trump has used the full power of the federal government to attack Americans in cities across the country. In Donald Trump's America, you are at increased risk of experiencing militaristic operations in your home, increased risk of being subject to detainment by mass thugs and wannabe vigilantes, increased risk of suffering injuries due to reckless and illegal acts by rogue federal agents, increased risk of being deported to foreign nations even if you are an American citizen, and you're at an increased risk of being targeted by federal government for criticizing the president and his friends. Congressional Republicans have completely abandoned their Article I powers and have exchanged their responsibility to their constituents with fealty to the president. They have allowed the president to morph federal agencies into instruments of autocracy. And as a result, the president has been able to ignore federal law, disregard court orders, and implement the largest pay-for-play scheme in American history. The White House, well, what's left of it anyway, is literally up for sale. The federal courts have characterized this presidency as, quote, lawless.
Republicans are going to try to get you to believe that they were always in support of transparency, that they happily allowed the bill to pass in the House, that they all went along with it in the Senate, and of course, Donald Trump signed it. So how could you say that he was blocking the Epstein files? How could you say we weren't for transparency? Well, you did keep Adalita Grijalva from being sworn in for 50 days. Donald Trump didn't originally release the files when it was a day one promise, and he could have this whole time. Of course, Mike Johnson went through as much obstruction as possible. So did John Thune. He was only at the last leg, so he let the thing go through, but we're not going to allow them to twist the narrative. We're not going to allow them to lie to us. And it's pretty clear how panicked they are. By Donald Trump's post right here, and buckle up, because it's a long one. Trump wrote on Truth Social, Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many well-known Democrat figures such as Bill Clinton, who traveled on his plane 26 times, Larry Summers, who just resigned from many boards, including Harvard, Sleabag political activist Reid Hoffman, minority leader Haki Jeffrey, who asked Epstein to donate to his campaign after Epstein was charged. That's not true. Democrat Congresswoman Stacey Plask, and many more. Perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associates with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed, because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. As everyone knows, I asked Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune to pass the bill in the House and the Senate, respectively. Because of this request, the votes were almost unanimous in favor of passage, at my direction. The Department of Justice has already turned over close to 50,000 pages of documents to Congress. Do not forget, the Biden administration did not turn over a single file. Trump continues, or page related to Democrat Epstein, nor did they ever even speak about him. Democrats have used the Epstein issue, which affects them far more than the Republican Party. Okay? In order to try and distract from our amazing victories, including, of course, Donald Trump is going to rattle off a bunch of things that he didn't actually do, and many other Democrat-created witch hunts and scams that he's complaining about, all of which have been so terrible and divisive for our country and have been done to confuse, deflect, and distract from the great job that Republicans and the Trump administration are doing. The latest hoax will backfire on the Democrats just as all of the rest have. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. So yes, I'd call that a bit more than a doozy. And I'll add, as others have pointed out recently, that when Donald Trump was spending time with Jeffrey Epstein, he was a self-described Democrat. Not that anyone ever really believed it. So when Trump claims Epstein loved hanging around Democrats, he's basically telling on himself. But this is exactly the kind of historical revisionism Trump is already engaging in. He's insisting the House and Senate voted to release the Epstein files because he told them to. I will repeat this as many times as necessary. They did not vote for the release because of Donald Trump. They voted for it because he was too weak to stop them. Trump has lost his grip on the Republican Party, and he knows it. It terrifies him. The MAGA base is fractured. Chaos has erupted. No one listens to Trump anymore, and no one listens to Mike Johnson either, because Johnson's authority only exists through Trump, and nobody respects him. He is simply Trump's puppet. But with the GOP's razor-thin majority already divided, those fractures are too overwhelming for Trump to control. This has effectively ended his presidency. He will pass nothing. This, the Epstein files, is what we will be talking about from here on out, and it's what we should be talking about, because they will continue to obstruct the release at every turn. And remember, it isn't just the DOJ and FBI that hold Epstein files. The Treasury does too. Trump is desperate to hide those because following the money, as victims have said repeatedly, will show exactly where it leads. It will lead to the check Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein for a woman, if you remember that. It will lead to more Epstein associates who will reveal more about Trump, and he can't simply shuffle them off to a cushier prison like he did with Ghislaine Maxwell. That won't work here. This is the end of Trump's presidency. This is the end of his administration. This is the nail in MAGA's coffin. The movement is too fractured for him to hold together. And now is the time to keep applying pressure, because they're not only fighting each other, they're fighting for their political lives. They know it's over for Donald Trump. I'm not exaggerating. This is a major turning point, and that is exactly why they will try everything, slow-walking the release, blocking it, dragging their feet, to keep these files hidden. Jasmine Crockett called all of this out and highlighted a very important set of Treasury documents, the ones I mentioned earlier. Take a look.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of excuses. I mean, please explain to us again why Representative Grijalva had her swearing in delayed. Please explain to us again why it is that in the middle of the longest shutdown in the history of this country, the speaker avoided bringing us in. This was all about avoiding this. He says that it was political, but at the end of the day, if it was an almost unanimous vote, then why is it that the speaker couldn't just put it on the floor? And if the president had nothing to hide, then why is it that we ever had to do a vote? Why is it that we're sitting here waiting on the Senate to vote? So, I am so happy that there's at least one step in the right direction for these survivors. But at the end of the day, this was an utter disgrace, and it had nothing to do with the speaker trying to better this bill, because ultimately, in all the time that it took to get the 218 signatures to do the discharge petition, he could have actually dropped his own bill with the language that he wanted to see, and he didn't.
Congresswoman, do you believe the Senate will pass it? Do you believe the president will sign it? And if those two things happen, do you believe the Justice Department will comply fully with the legislation as written?
I don't know. It sounds like the Senate is ready to move. That's fine. But I believe that if the Senate does move and if the president does sign it into law, and at least the votes from the House make it veto proof. If we get about 67 votes out of the Senate, then it'll be veto proof. And no matter what, this will become law. Now, whether or not we get what we need from the Department of Justice is a whole other issue. Pam Bondi does not work for the American people. She has made it clear that she has one boss, and that is Donald Trump. And so we know that there is an outstanding subpoena to the Department of Justice from the Oversight Committee, and they have failed to properly comply with that subpoena in the first place. The only reason that we're even getting information right now is because of the Epstein estate.
We already know what Donald Trump will do in the next 30 days and what he absolutely won't do. And that includes giving the public a full, honest release of the Epstein files. It's simply not going to happen. He'll pretend. He'll claim he has. He'll put on a show. But he will not actually do it. Meanwhile, he and Pam Bondi will keep trying to rewrite the story. We cannot let that happen. We have to keep calling them out, and we will continue doing that on this show. If you want to support this work, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, drop a like, and if you made it to the end, leave a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.